Hello, and welcome to GenCon and the very special, very exciting FFG Aconyte Arkham Horror stream, where we get to talk about all the gribbly monsters and all the cool things that are happening with the game and the novels now and in the future. I'm Anjuli, I'm your moderator today. I'm Aconyte Books Marketing and Publicity Manager here in the UK. It's nice evening time here for us. And I will start introducing our guests. First up, we have Philip Henry. Say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, I am part of Fantasy Flight Games Arkham Horror.
I think you're muted.
I shouldn't be.
I can hear him.
I'm part of Arkham Horror, the Arkham Horror story team at Fantasy Flight Games. I'm also the line.
I can't hear you. Is it just me?
Yes, it's just you, Anjuli.
Oh no, I can't hear you at all.
Well, if everyone else.
Sorry, I've worked it out. It was me. Sorry. Yay, tech. Hello, sorry. Everyone else heard it, so who cares? If I couldn't hear it, I know who you are. Next up, we have Katrina Ostrada.
I just want to quick defer back to Phil because he didn't quite have a chance to
Did not.
his intro.
I didn't hear it. I'm so sorry. It's all
That's
gone
all
wrong.
right.
Phil,
Fix it in post.
Go back.
Okay, I'll go again just in case it got missed. I am part of the Arkham Horror story team at Fantasy Flight Games, and I am the line developer for Arkham Horror 3rd edition of the board game.
Excellent. And next up, Katrina Ostrada.
Hi, everyone. I've been working on the Arkham Horror franchise since 2014 or so, first on the novellas from Fantasy Flight Games. And I've also been working with the story team, of which Phil and MJ are members. I work very closely with the amazing folks at Aconyte to make sure that we're getting the tone and feel and details of the IP all right. So that's mainly what I get to do as creative director of story and setting at Fantasy Flight.
Wonderful. And MJ Newman. Yes.
Hi, I'm MJ. I'm the lead developer for the Arkham Horror, the card game line.
And next up, we have Ari Marmel. Ari, tell us a little bit about who you are.
I am a novelist slash game writer slash short story writer, and now also script writer. I'm the author of Litany of Dreams. It is my almost but not quite 20th novel.
Whoa, that is exciting. Almost 20th. Amazing. Rosemary Jones, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Jones. I'm the author of Mask of Silver, which is set in the Arkham Horror setting, and I am the author of the upcoming Deadly Grimoire, which will be out in March of 2022. Both deal with silent movies, Arkham Horror, and have been great fun to write.
And we just did the cover reveal for that one as part of our GenCon online show-offs. Yes, it's lovely. I love this strand of them with all the like movie sort of looking ones. They're nice. I like them a lot. And S.A. Cider. Hello.
Hello, I'm S.A. Cider. I'm the author of The Last Ritual and the upcoming book Cult of the Spider Queen, which I think is coming out in December.
It is. I'm very excited for that one. Our editor said, don't read this if you don't like spiders. It's like, okay, it's got a massive spider on the front. I'm sure, hopefully, we don't need a warning with it as well.
I don't like spiders, but I put giant spiders in everything that I do. So
That's a good policy.
I mean, I'm the same. I don't like people, but there are people in all of my work. So.
almost by necessity. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So let's get into the panel. So at its core, Arkham Horror is it's designed for storytelling as a game, and so it makes sense that at some point novels would come along. We've had the novellas as well, and yeah, I'm very excited that we get to work with the team at FFG to create these amazing stories, which are some of my favorites in our range. But for anyone here who isn't really familiar with the Arkham Horror games, can you tell us maybe a little bit more about it, and specifically about the world which the stories are set?
Yeah, back in the olden days of 1987, Richard Lanius wrote a board game inspired by the mythos fiction of H.P. Lovecraft. In 2005, Fantasy Flight gave that a glow up and made Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, which was one of the first co-op games, one of the first big hobby games. And since then, we've had several other titles. We're in the 3rd edition of the board game. We have the very successful LCG, which just expands the way we tell stories. We have numerous other games that all tell the stories at different scale, but at its core, they're all versions of the 1920s where dark magic and alien influences from beyond our world threaten all of humanity. One of the ways we differ a lot from that source material, though, is we're a little more pulp, a little more action. The heroes of the mythos fiction are pretty much always doomed. Like, no one really wins. But we're making a game. We want people to be able to win. So you can get a shotgun and it's going to cost you and it's going to hurt, but you can go shotgun Cthulhu in the face if you need to. Hopefully you don't need to.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how like Arkham Horror differs a lot from the regular Cthulhu mythos because of that like pulp and the noir and the adventure basis, like that through line that comes through all of our games, certainly. But I think that MJ has kind of veered a little bit more into the straight horror, creeping dread like aspect of it. Like there are some scenarios where I'm like, this is scary. I don't want to play this. Thanks, MJ.
What can I say? I like horror.
Yeah, what has been your experience working on the LCG? What's kind of been your vision for the living card game?
Yeah, I mean, I think Phil hit the nail on the head there with the fact that like we're making a game and we want players to be able to win. So one of the core sort of design facets for the Arkham IP is we want players to feel afraid, obviously. Like we want them to feel like, you know, like this is an impossible situation that they can't possibly win, but then we want them to actually have a chance. And that creates a sort of air of optimism and hope and inspires players to achieve things that they didn't think that would be possible, and while not making it seem easy by any stretch of the imagination.
You're muted, Anjuli.
I never survived the games. That is something that whenever I played Arkham Horror, we always die. But there is hope that maybe this time we'll play it and we won't die this time. But
I'm
no.
trying to think of a time I've done the board. I'm more familiar. I play the board game Wars. And yeah, I do not succeed. But thank you for letting me know that there is a possibility.
Yeah, like a big part of the original writings, I think, were making the reader feel like impotent and like powerless, right? Like they have no control over anything. We're completely insignificant. And we don't want players to feel that way. We want them to feel like ordinary people who are rising to the occasion and achieving things that they didn't think they could.
Yeah. For the authors then, how do you include that sort of, because you obviously we're trying to write sort of a bit horror, a bit mystery, how do you sort of give your characters that hope that maybe they'll make it to the end?
Well, for me, that was a yay. I got that instruction because I'm a generally hopeful person, and I like to believe that ordinary people can succeed and by using their brains and their wits. And so that was really a through line theme in Mask of Silver, that the women of Arkham, which by the way, women don't exist in Lovecraft, so that was easy. I could do anything I wanted with them. That the women would rise to the occasion and saved the day. In particular, Jeannie, who's a little bit of my little introvert costume designer. That was it was fun to write her. It was fun to get into the 20s, which is a wonderful decade just for historical research, as I'm sure the Fantasy Flight folks know. But there's just so much going on. It was so easy to go, okay, I can steal a little from here, and I can steal a little from there, and mix it in with Arkham, and it's going to work.
Excellent.
I think one of the great things about working in this world is the flexibility of the scale, because you can do things on a very big scale where the whole planet or the whole universe or the whole dimension is under threat, but then it also can work on a very intimate level and a very personal level where an individual character can be wondering, am I the only one who sees this? Am I the only one who's going through this? Or how can I find other people who see the same things I do and are willing to help me in this fight? And I think that flexibility of scale is one of the great things about it, because then you can have victories on one scale and setbacks on another scale. And so I think that's one of the really appealing things from a creative point of view, is how you can address it on all those different levels.
And in my case, it worked really well because my view of the kind of horror I like to write and to read and to watch, I'm not somebody who goes for the completely bleak nihilistic types of horror endings. I want there to be. I don't like futility, but by the same token, I don't require horror to have a happy ending. Obviously, so like what you were just saying about the different scales, the success on this level, not on this level, it works very well for me. It's the heroes accomplished something. That doesn't mean that they won per se,
right?
And that's that seems to me to be roughly where Arkham Horror tends to shoot for. There are differences here and there. The editors had to tug on my reins pretty hard a couple of times as far as dialing back some of the horror, but in general, the overall aesthetic is one that really works for me, and matches a lot of what I do anyway.
So the games themselves are hugely successful, and they built up a very loyal fan base who I quite like being a part of now, like sort of within the Aconyte side of it, sort of jumping and being like, oh, hello, everyone. What do you think it is about the game that sort of lures people in and keeps them here and wanting more?
For me, I think it's that feeling of like embodying this character who's going on this sort of fantastical but also horrifying journey, and having like full control over those actions and like all of the decisions that you make, all of the consequences that spiral out of that. Those are all things that you did, things that you chose to do, or things that you failed to do, or things that you succeeded to do. It's that kind of RPG feeling that I think makes the games really, really sing. And also, like, going back to what we were saying before, it's like everything in Arkham feels like such a huge, enormous threat, but you never quite feel like powerless against them. Like, you always have something you can do. And even when you lose, like, the game keeps going, and there's just things that happen as a result of you like losing. Like, you never really win or lose Arkham, just things happen. And then more things happen, and then events, spiral out of control.
Yeah, I think that sense of exploration and consequence is a big thing that people clue into with these games.
Yeah, and I would say, to build off the first point you made, MJ, I think that like one of the major strengths of the brand are the 50 plus investigators that you can play, like no matter which version of the game you're playing. And like these are very identifiable like people that you could like slip into their shoes. Like not every game lets you play like a waitress or the photographer or librarian, or like these kind of like normal folks, like someone that you could really imagine yourself being. And and you get to become heroic. And also we've tried, especially in some of our more recent games, to really expand the cast of characters beyond like the original like bookish male academic like character, the stock character that always appears in the Lovecraftian games. And so I think people really like to see themselves represented in these games. People from all over the world, people from all different kinds of backgrounds.
Yeah, and I would say that all of the characters, because they appear in so many different places and we get to see different sides of them, they've become more three-dimensional, I think, than a typical character in a board game would, where it's just like a few lines of text and that's all you get, and a name and a picture. We've really fleshed them out to become like humans.
And we're also lucky now that we have the novels in which to flesh them out, like more than you could ever do in a board game. So that's like really exciting.
It's been fun, and I've enjoyed the notes from Katrina particularly. It was like, yeah, Daryl wouldn't quite do that yet, and I was like, writing back going, well, Daryl's a little younger in Mask of Silver. Mask of Silver actually takes place about 2 years before the board game Milo, which is 1926. So, and I very deliberately said in 1923, so I could shove the boundaries a little on some things.
Yes,
it's been fun.
It's very immersive. I was just looking over the stories I've written before we were going to have this talk, and at one point I couldn't remember if it was a character that I had made or a character that was one of the investigators that I took, and I thought, well, that's probably good. It's probably good that I can't remember if this is someone that I just picked up and sort of played with for the novel, or if it was someone that I wholly made up for myself. So for me, that's one of the most appealing things, is how immersive it all is, and how it feels very easy to sort of get caught up in the story and blend into everything.
Well, I also feel like, excuse me, as far as the appeal of the board game, you have the immersion in the characters, but it's also accessible to people who are looking for, and I don't say this disparagingly at all, who are looking for a little more surface. If people want to experience, they're a fan of the mythos, but they're not looking for the I don't feel like I getting into the more unpleasant aspects of what is essentially a horror setting. Because the game does allow you to play it as much more of a pulp adventure sort of thing, it's almost widening the audience for the source material in a way. It's more accessible, I think, for a broader audience than even the original writings are, and that's leaving aside the problematic aspects of the writing. Just in general, it's people can be as immersed or not in it as they choose, and the game still works.
Yeah, and to build on that, we've explored different facets of horror, like different subgenres of horror within the franchise. So, we've had like some products, some campaigns, and some stories that are more psychological horror, and some that are more gothic horror, and some that are more just like mystery and not really as much horror. And I think that helps to, like you said, like kind of bring in a diverse group of readers and players.
Yeah, and that's certainly what Aconyte is doing as well. We've got sort of almost our two strands with our Art Deco type covers, which are a little bit more on the horror side of things, whereas the ones that look like movie posters are more that sort of mystery, pulpy part to them, which it's nice to have those multiple strands going on, so that you can direct people, I'm really interested more in the horror aspect. You go, these ones will probably be better for you, or these ones here if you're not really into scary things. Yeah, I know that some of them, the reviews I've read for them is just like, this was really scary. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Is that what you were after?
Yeah. I was going to say, Essay's most recent story like legitimately gave me nightmares, which I felt like meant that it was succeeding in the best way. So
good.
Yeah, like Ari, I feel for you, because I often also have like Katrina pulling me back a little bit from going too far in the horror, like the body horror especially. So yeah.
That was one of the main places in mine as well. Yeah, it was the body horror specifically.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because like we get reports like you know, a lot of people like Arkham Horror Second Edition was like their introduction into hobby games. Like it's such a classic, and it's like touched so many people, and like it also appeals, I think, to folks that are like in their teenage years, or like, you know, that aren't like super like older or you know, ready for the really like the gratuitous horror or the body horror of some of these. I actually heard of some folks playing Mansions of Madness Second Edition with like their middle schoolers or even like elementary schoolers. There's definitely like spooks and like creepy crawly things and things like that, but like but it's nice that there's a range, right? Like it's not Arkham Horror the LCG, where like Labyrinths of Lunacy I think sticks out as one.
Yeah. Maybe don't give my novel to the elementary school kids.
Yeah, maybe.
Reader's safe. I'm always in the YA. 13 areas I get. Can we talk about the fabulous artwork too? Because I'm
yes, please do.
We can and we should. And you're holding up one of my favorite characters. So
yes, well, and I you notice I stole it for Deadly Grimoire. So yeah, because this is a fabulous character. It's Winnie is an aviatrix, and the artwork in the pack itself is just so much fun. I've been literally using them kind of like a little tarot deck. I go lay them out and go, okay, what am I going to get into the chapter? How am I going to start today? And it's been so much fun to like. There's really a picture is worth 1,000 words. So even though the cards, I'm writing, 80,000 words based on 10 words on a card. So the pictures really help, and the pictures are amazing.
Yeah, I think we have our dedicated art team to thank for that. They've been really working on like honing that feel of Arkham Horror for a long time, and like using kind of those tricks of like showing the before the action and the after the action to let your imagination like fill in like those moments of horror or grotesque dread, that kind of thing. But I know the artists that we've gotten like those Art Deco covers in particular for Aconyte have been like incredible, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Our artists also do a great job of adding unsettling things to scenes that, like, we just say, we need a lady sitting on a park bench reading a catalog. And then the art comes back and they've added this swarm of crows just. Yes, you made our boring thing awesome.
That's true. Well, that's like Jeff Lee Johnson's trademark, right?
Oh, yeah.
Someone in chat says that they teach Arkham Horror to their older students at school, 11 to 18, and they love playing it.
Nice.
Oh, fabulous.
Oh, that's awesome.
Very nice.
That's really cool. I like that. I wish we had some of the taught us board games at school. No one taught us. Oh. So, authors, why were you drawn to the Arkham Horror setting then for your stories? Because FFG does some amazing IPs. Why was it Arkham Horror that you sort of needed to write in?
I think, at least in my case, it goes back to what I was saying about the aesthetic and general feel, the particular niche of horror that the game represents, being very close to my own aesthetic and my darker writing. The idea that you want a horror that is horrific and does not necessarily have happy endings, but at the same time is not as completely nihilistic and futile as some modern horror or much of Lovecraft's original writings. It felt like a good natural fit to begin with. I'd already done some writing in not the 20s, but in the 1930s. One of my original series is set there, so I already liked the historical period. And I already had things I wanted to do with Lovecraft's toy box. So it really just felt like this was an opportunity that I'd been waiting for without knowing I was waiting for it.
The 20s. Oh, it's the 1920s. I mean, it was a chance to jump in and do that. I'd previously been writing pretty much straight up sword and sorcery fantasy for another media tie-in, and some modern superhero kind of stuff for small press. And this was a case of getting into something that I read all the time, which is historical fantasy, and being able to set it in the solidly in America because I bless the steampunk movement, but I really kind of need to move some stuff to the States. Everything's in London. So I wanted to, I just kind of wanted to think, and I've always had in the back of my head, magic and the silent movies would go together great if I could find a place to play that particular story. And I think I threw 3 at Aconyte to start with for this setting, and everybody went, "Oh, the movies! We want the movies." So that's where
it is a really interesting sort of time within sort of history. We had a big long talk about it on the YouTube channel. If people are watching here, you can find it later as well. But that was really interesting, talking about silent movies and that time period.
And Side Art already grabbed art colleges, so I can do that. Which I love that aspect of the art.
I really like the pulpiness of it and the ability to sort of turn up or mash it together with other genres. So you can lean into the mystery a little bit more in one story or a part of the story, or you could blend in science fiction. You can turn up the horror. I really also like the difference in pacing, that you could have the story be a sort of a very slow drip, slow burn, but then you could also go completely bonkers crazy and have things explode in a way that it's not just one. You could mix those together, and that was very appealing to me. Sort of the ability to bring in other genres and other strains, sort of to blend those in, and also to like I said, the difference of the pacing. And I just love the weirdness. I love weird stories. I love checking into a strange world full of eccentric characters, where that's all sort of a given. It's a given that things are going to be strange here, and it's fun to visit. It's fun to go there and spend time there.
Yeah. So moving on to something a little bit more serious. So whenever people are sort of discussing Eldritch horrors and things, there's always sort of a mention about Lovecraft's sort of lack of inclusion, especially for minority groups. How have the FFG team sort of overcome this sort of tarnish that comes with creating games and books inspired by his work?
Yeah, I think we've really made an effort, especially in the last few years, to be really considering like whose perspectives we're inviting into the development of the games, and like getting people with unique perspectives, people from different backgrounds to help generate content and weigh in on those sorts of things. And it's really just been, reaching out and getting the expertise that we need when it's something that like we don't have like the people on staff with the expertise to do something. Reaching out to freelance sensitivity readers has been something that has made life a lot like easier for us. So we're excited to continue using that, and just like being mindful and considerate of what perspectives, what characters, what backgrounds we're really highlighting in the story, and trying to make those like diverse and dipping into places that like people don't immediately think of when they think of Lovecraft.
Yeah, and I think it's important. Like one of the things that we strive to do is to include like a diverse cast of characters from all walks of life and all different kinds of backgrounds, and avoid harmful stereotypes, and basically make our games and our stories accessible for anyone, no matter who you are.
And there's some terrific research going on. There's a lot of work right now being done to kind of expand the history books, I think is probably the right way to put it. And, in the silent movie research area, there are so many films and so many people who are working in films whose work kind of got lost or shuffled off to the side. And there's been terrific work in the film festivals, silent movie preservation. I'm blessed in Seattle to have an enormous film festival here, which often features silent movie work and early preservation work, and really has brought forward a lot of the actual diversity that was going on that just simply got kind of written out of the history. And It's terrific. It was not hard to make a very diverse cast for Sydney's crew. In Mask of Silver, everybody pretty much tracks back to an actual person working in Hollywood at the time, or 2 or 3 people working in Hollywood, because nobody's an exact representation, but they all are sort of an amalgam of folks that actually existed. You know, I can find newspaper stories, I can find oral histories, and get back into that. For the current book, I've been working with our Museum of Flight on women in flight, and it's just been really fun. It's fun to go see those things, and I hope it inspires people to do a little deeper dive.
Oh, I've got a question from the chat. Let's have a question, seeing as we're here and I can control the chat. What are your biggest literary inspirations from the mythos or wider fiction? I suppose, yeah, everyone can talk about in regards to, Arkham storylines and also Aconyte stories as well.
Well, I've spoken a lot about my influences. I think I wear a lot of my influences on my shoulder. I think it shows. I grew up playing a lot of horror video games, so a lot of those influences bled into my creative work later in life. So things like the way that power dips up and down as an investigator. Like if you have a gun, you suddenly have agency. You can fight something. You have a gun, but it's going to run out of ammo. Like that kind of thing. That little like resource management mini game of how like firearms work. That's straight up Resident Evil. That's survival horror. So like that's where a lot of my influences came from early in life.
I mean, I sort of, I don't know if I have major influences so much as I collect bits as I go. I collect an idea from here, imagery from there. I just you mentioned Resident Evil. I have a sequence in Litany of Dreams that was actually heavily inspired by a scene in one of those games. I'm not going to go into detail. I'll let people wonder. But then, my writing style is influenced primarily by authors who never did horror. I do a lot of fantasy writing as well, and some of that style has crept over even into the horror stuff. A lot of my writing style was inspired by the earlier books of Stephen Brust, his Vlad Taltos fantasy series. And then I love a lot of the mythos. I tend to work a lot of Lovecraftian style horror into non-horror work. A lot of my dark fantasy has little bits of that. And then answering this and going back to the prior discussion, I will find that I'm influenced by wanting to change or correct some of the people that I've read or seen. You mentioned Lovecraft. You said lack of diversity, which I think is an extremely politically correct way of putting it. Anti-diversity is more like what I would say. One of the primary characters of Litany of Dreams, Billy Shiwak, the Inuit character. I've had him in mind since long before I planned this book or before you were doing Arkham Horror novels. I just knew that I wanted to do a Lovecraftian story where a non-white character from a non-American culture was coming here to recover the lost relic from an evil American group, as opposed to the constant reverse of that, which is so. A lot of my influences are somebody should do that differently, as opposed to I want to duplicate that.
Yeah, I think I kind of went off that too, and the big influences for the Mask of Silver were really Robert Chambers, who's a little earlier than Lovecraft, which is a huge influence on Lovecraft. And I had not read King in Yellow in years, and I went back and read that, and they're amazing stories, and he's an amazing writer. And then, I grew up with Mary Roberts Reinhardt, which was an early 20th century mystery writer. And well, I lost my voice out there. But yeah, she was a huge influence on this book, and anybody who's read it will see it in the book.
For me specifically, with The Last Ritual, my idea was to kind of do Gatsby plus monsters, and so I certainly had an influence there from the world of F. Scott Fitzgerald, who's one of my favorite writers, and then I also try to use as a springboard going into my books a specific place in Lovecraft. So for that, where I wanted to talk about the crossroads of the art world and surrealism with Arkham and Lovecraft, I went to the story Pickman's Model and sort of used that as a mood setter for myself before I started writing it. And for the new book that I have coming out, Cult of the Spider Queen, I reread it several times, The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, and sort of picked up a lot of what was in there and tried to work with it in a different way. And that was a work that I was not that familiar with. I had probably read it a long time ago, but to go into it more deeply and all the fantasy aspects of it, and the different kinds of creatures and monsters and characters that are in that dream world, and the whole idea of the dream world was really appealing to me. But for both of my books, I had a very specific place in Lovecraft that I sort of used for one point of inspiration.
Excellent. Right. Well, so we have E.P. Gellon says an older FFG article mentioned that unlike classical Lovecraft, the Arkham universe still has hope for the characters rather than just despair. Has that remained a key component on which you focus? I think we did touch on that a little bit. That it's
I think part of it stems, like we were saying before, the fact that Arkham Horror has typically manifested in the form of a game, and a game where you're just getting like crushed and losing all the time. Like there's a certain genre of game, like people that are really into like challenge, that appeals to. And like certainly, like a lot of people have said here, challenge is still a part of the Arkham Horror game, but I think that the hope really comes through in like the cooperation themes and the fact that like it isn't one person just trying to stave off the nightmare from intruding on reality. It's like a group of people that may not have even like known each other before, don't have like pre-established relationships. They all have different strengths and weaknesses, and so together they can do more than they could independently. And I think like the troop style and the fact that like even in Arkham Horror, the LCG, where you can play solo, like you still have allies that you're like bringing into the game, people to like back you up, have your back, like help you overcome something that would be too much alone. And certainly in Arkham Horror, the board game, I think, Phil, that's one of the things that you've tried to like think about when you're like balancing a scenario is like, what cast of characters are you going to bring? How do they work together? And so I think that kind of like brings the hope through in a lot of our games.
I feel like, again, I'm repeating myself a bit here with both my horror, my preferred horror and Arkham Horror being, there's always that glimmer of, even if it's not a happy ending, that glimmer that it's not totally futile. And I feel like at the risk of making the subtext into text, I feel like at this moment in the world, I feel like there's more call for that and more need for that maybe than purely nihilistic horror. I feel like there needs to be. I feel like there needs to be, and there's a hunger for a sense that, as hard as the challenges are, there's at least a vague chance of getting through them.
Yeah.
I feel like that's more important now to a lot of games and fiction than it might have been even just 10, 15 years ago.
There's There is
Yep.
that trope that the screwball comedy rose out of the 1930s because it was the darkest time, and so suddenly stuff gets much snappier and snazzier, and there's a little bit of that in Grimoire. I mean, it's more than a small tip of the hat to Nick and Nora and Dashiell Hammett and Thin Man Mysteries. So if you know those Hollywood classics, it's and there's a reason, because things, as the 20s crash, everybody feels the need for comedy and the need to go into the movies and kind of lose influence from that. And again, I'm a hopeful person. I like the hope aspects. Like, it's always going to run through. And I love writing the group novel where the found family, not necessarily the family you come from, but the family you find and define, the friends that are there to pull you out of the pit as the tentacle is reaching for you. It's really important for me, and it runs through all of my fantasy and stuff. So it's been really fun to play that trope out in Arkham.
Excellent. Wow. So, where do you all see Aconyte taking Arkham Horror in the next 12 months and beyond? What if you had 3 wishes from a genie to make these things happen? What would you want to see? I can't promise I'll make them happen, but
Is saying that I want to see the game have a new expansion based on my book too selfish to put in that wish list?
Yeah, that's my dream. So hopefully I'm going to be working with some people to get our investigators into the game. That's my dream. Yeah, I want all the Aconyte investigators and main characters and side characters to all be part of the game, so I can play all the characters that I love.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to what I was saying earlier about making the characters seem like living, breathing people in a world, right? And making them 3-dimensional. The fact that they keep crossing over and appearing in all these different mediums.
Oh, I thought that the nicest note I got was I love Jeannie and I can see her as a card. So
Jeannie is great.
So I think Oh, you love Betsy. It's got a blow your
But I would love to see novels, be they mine or other people's, and game expansions just continue to explore maybe some settings and parts of the world or circumstances that we haven't seen in Lovecraftian fiction that people don't tend to even associate with Lovecraftian fiction. I had a friend a while ago who was talking about doing a Call of Cthulhu role-playing game, a session set in the midst of the Dust Bowl. And not just sit there, but focused on those aspects. And that's inspired some story ideas in my head. But it's just one example. I'd love to see, not that there haven't been any already, but I'd love to see more locations and historical periods in that same general area that we just haven't seen in Lovecraft before.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about a lot internally, and I think Unfathomable is our first sort of foray into what does Arkham look like when it's not set in the 1920s. Mm-hmm. If you don't know, Unfathomable is our new hidden traitor social deduction board game, and it's set in the 1910s. So, very, very much 1920s adjacent, but who knows?
A very different feeling. The world hasn't been shattered yet.
Yeah.
And I saw in your in-flight report I was watching this morning that there's like the time travel expansion thing.
Yeah.
Like the 1890s and the 1920s and the 1950s. I was like, can we write books in that? That was my first thought, was like, I want time traveling ones. Let's do those. That sounds like good fun.
That's another one where our team really killed it.
Yeah.
Because we can see the same building 60 years apart at 3 different intervals, and it's really evocative to see how our known world has changed.
Yeah.
Well, Oh, there's so much stuff going on, and even the footnotes. I was reading the newspapers for the month that Deadly Grimoire set in, and I found a little story on bootlegging, which is kind of a theme in Deadly. But it was about a woman who solves a bootlegging conspiracy in Prague where people are bootlegging film. So they're copying the films and selling them, and the money isn't getting back to Hollywood. And this young woman tracks down the illicit. This is all in the New York Times. Tracks down these illicit bootleggers, reports them to the embassy, and has to flee via taxi to avoid being shot. And it's like a 4-paragraph story, and I'm reading the whole thing. And I'm like, oh, this is an Arkham Horror story. They're bootlegging Sydney's film, and
And a monster.
Any moment now, I'm going to do the short story set in Prague with this. Young woman.
Oh, and then the film is like The Ring, and everyone watches it.
Yeah. But it was it's just you really anytime you open up a newspaper from that period, anytime you look at anything, you're like, oh my goodness, there's still so many stories left to tell.
Yeah.
Nice flexible universe.
Yeah. Any other thoughts about where things should go?
I mean, if I could wave a magic wand, right? Like pie in the sky, Arkham TV show, Arkham movies, Arkham cinematic universe.
Yes, that would be good. Yeah. It'd be
I did mention that I'm getting into script writing, right? Keep my email.
I did mention that I watch a lot of anime, right?
Anime. Yes, let's do it.
That would be amazing. That would be so much fun.
I'd love to see some Arkham based on William Hope Hodgson House on the Borderland or Nightland.
Oh, what an interesting idea.
Mm-hmm.
Make it happen, writers. So, authors, have you got any questions for our FFG team at all? Anything that you been dying to ask this team? Anything at all? I asked you homework.
Do I win the board game? Can I ask that one?
What was it?
How do I win the board game? I get crushed every time I play.
2nd edition or 3rd edition?
I think we've got 2nd. So maybe
I think you've got to pray to the dice gods.
Yeah.
It's like 10% luck, 20% skill, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I'm always playing Mansions of Madness, and that's the one. Or I can get like through the first one, and then after that I'm like dead every time. It's like oh dear, this house is falling apart, and there is things chasing after me.
Oh no, I'm a pyromaniac now, and I'm now working against the other players.
Oops.
Yep. Yeah, it never ends well for me, but I love it. It's good fun. And what about the FFG team? You got any questions, any things you want to ask the authors at all?
So, yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So in the board game and in the card game, all of the characters always come with some kind of signature card, right? Some kind of signature, either an item or an ally or some skill that's like very unique to them, the thing that makes them who they are. For Winifred, for example, it's just a skill card called anything you can do. Like anything you can do, I can do better. Because that's just showing off her flashy side. So like what the protagonist of your particular novel, what would their signature card be? Like what's Betsy Baxter's signature card?
Oh, Betsy, it's either going to be a hat or her silver-plated pistol. And they both seem to be in... she's changing hats throughout the book to, which it just becomes kind of a theme. It's disguising her in some cases and emphasizing, kind of the character she is going to present to the person. She's being a bit of a trickster. So
Would you say she wears many hats?
He wears many hats would be a great card. Yes.
I'm writing these down for when I start building these Arkham cards.
She does have her silver-plated pistol, but then Winnie has her Mauser, and I'm still trying to figure out like how we're going to work that one.
What about the Countess?
What?
What about the Countess?
That is Josh Reynolds.
Oh, that's right.
He's not here.
And he doesn't like to be on camera. He's not here. He doesn't like being on camera.
What you want for your characters? I'm wondering for what essay would put from.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would guess that for Alden, the painter. I mean, his paintings, his artwork is being opened up. His mind is being opened up by the chaos of surrealism at the same time as what he envisions becomes possible is the thing that he struggles with and also uses as a positive in his fight. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know how it would be.
That sounds like that could be like a good card or a weakness or something.
Yeah,
right.
Just written down what he envisions he is possible.
Right.
Sounds like a good name for a card.
So I think for Elliot, it would be devotion, both as a strength in terms of what he will do and what he can endure for someone he cares about. By the same token, I feel like it can be a detriment almost to, I don't want to say obsession, because that has implications to it that don't fit, but it's a devotion that he puts this person ahead of himself. He's his own needs and goals are secondary. He kind of almost loses himself a little bit to whoever he's devoted to. So again, it's a strength, but there's a downside to it. I'm not sure exactly how that would translate to game mechanics, but something along those lines.
I just thought it'd be a cool discussion topic.
Yeah.
I love the idea of the signature and the weakness having the same title.
Right, yeah. Well, it's kind of like we've done investigators with double-sided weaknesses before. Mark Harrigan comes to mind. So
yeah, so that's how it would fit in the game for you. Actually, sometimes it might be worth using a weakness, sacrificing yourself for the good of the team, maybe. Right. Well, we've come sort of to the end now. So, chat. Thank you very much for being so lively and talking with each other. It's very exciting for me to read them. If you have any more questions, do pop them in the chat box now. I did see someone mention there about the audiobooks announcement that we put out last week. Yes, it is very exciting and very real, and I'm very excited to have our audiobooks coming in October to begin with some of our Arkham Horror, including The Last Ritual and Cult of the Spider Queen. It's going to be really, really cool. Hopefully by summer next year, we'll be all caught up with our backlog, and then we'll be releasing them at the same time as we're publishing the novels and ebooks in the US. So you'll be able to listen to them anywhere where you get your audiobooks from. It's going to mean that I'm finally going to be able to have read most of the Aconyte books because I can listen to them on my way to work and while I'm painting and things. So I'm very excited about them coming in finally. Yay. Wonderful. So any more questions, anyone? Anyone want to say anything that maybe I haven't touched on? Something about Arkham Horror that you love and want to share with the world?
Can I say happy birthday to Aconyte and congratulations?
Oh, yay! I forgot that. It's our birthday! Yay!
I pulled it off. I'm so impressed.
Yeah, 1 year of publishing this month. So, yeah, it's been a wild year. But we did it! We made books. Yes, well, thank you. Yes, we're having a couple of giveaways on our website as well. So you can vote for your favourite title, Aconyte title, or favourite Aconyte cover, and we will send cake to the winning author and the winning artist of those competitions.
Can I have cake?
Sure, we'll work out things cake as well. and whoever chooses the winning title, we're going to put you in a draw. And then you will win signed books as well of the winning 2 titles. Hopefully there'll be 2 titles. If not, you'll win 2 copies of the same book. But yes, there will be prizes for you as well. So do pop along to the Aconyte website to find out more. You can find out more about all the books on aconytebooks.com. And join us, join our mailing list, and come visit us on social media as well. We like to talk all sorts of nerdy things over on Twitter, especially. We like to talk board games. We like to talk books. We like to play board games. We like to write books. So yes, come along and join us. Even Yellow says he voted for Follow Her. If you voted for Robbie's Descent book, which is also that's my favourite cover of all time. Sorry, everyone, it is my favourite cover. I love it so much. It's a screen for my phone. Yay! So let's go back round the opposite way now and just reintroduce us as remind people who we are for those people who jumped in midway through. So. Starting with S.A. Cider.
I'm S.A. Cider. I'm the author of The Last Ritual and Cult of the Spider Queen from Aconyte.
Rosemary.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Jones. I'm the author of Mask of Silver and the upcoming Deadly Grimoire from Aconyte.
And Ari.
I'm Ari Marmel. I'm the author of Litany of Dreams, and nothing at the moment upcoming with Aconyte, but we'll be talking about that.
And MJ.
Hi, I have been MJ Newman. I am the lead developer of the Arkham Horror, the card game, and you can find my creative portfolio on my website, bewaretheblackcat.com. And this is Eris.
I was going to say, and the cat.
Yes, and this is Eris.
And Katrina.
Yeah, so I'm Katrina Ostrander. I'm the creative director of story and setting at Fantasy Flight Games.
And Philip.
I'm Philip Henry. I am part of the Arkham Horror story team at Fantasy Flight Games, and I'm also the lead developer for Arkham Horror, the board game.
And I have been Anjuli, marketing and publicity manager for Aconyte Books. Yes, thank you everyone so much for coming along to the panel, taking time out of your day to chat with us. Sad face that GenCon TV crashed and it's not working, but we're here on YouTube and people are here with us and talking to us, and that's wonderful. Thank you to the chat for coming along, and have a pleasant day and a lovely weekend as well, because it's almost the weekend. Woo. Right, goodbye, and talk later. Bye.